Hello and welcome to another episode of Starside Chat, episode 123, actually. I'm one of your hosts, Aaron, and with me, as always, is the other host, Zach. How's it going, Zach?
Good. We don't really have a lot of news this week, so hopefully we can sort of fill out the rest of the show with stuff we've been playing and watching. So we talked about it before we started recording. It's a little bit of a weird month for us because there's like a lot of games coming out, but not a lot that we're super excited about.
Yeah, the only thing that's really on, I think, both of our radars is Mario Wonder, which is coming out on the 20th. Neither of us are super into Spider-Man or what else was releasing?
Alan Wake 2 is coming out, but we're not really like survival horror fans.
You liked that Dead Space, right?
Yeah, Dead Space was cool. I played that, but I didn't play Alan Wake 1. Also, like, Dead Space is kind of... One, it's like sci-fi, which is like up my alley, but also it's like a third-person shooter with like some degree of like, you know, that Doom thing of you're constantly finding more weapons and sort of upgrading them. And so there was enough of that to sort of hang my hat on as I was going through that game that like I didn't particularly love like the gross alien scary stuff, but like I was able to get through that game and enjoy it for what it was. But I don't really see that being the case with Alan Wake.
Yeah.
Although you said you were curious enough just based on the fact that you played and liked Control.
I loved Control. I bought the first DLC. There were 2 DLC packs for Control, and the first one was interesting because you got a new power. You could choose between 2 different powers that like affected traversal. One of them was like I think you could mess with crystals, and like that would allow you to make bridges and things. But that first DLC was really cool because you went into the basement of the oldest house, which is the setting of Control. I love Control, and this is in the same extended universe, the Control extended universe, or whatever they're calling it, the Remedy universe. To the point where even, if you recall, that janitor, Ahti, who is like a mysterious figure in Control, he popped up in a trailer for Alan Wake 2. He's just like hanging out in the woods for some reason. So that aspect is interesting to me because they definitely are going to make a Control 2 at some point, and this is like maybe a good middle ground where maybe we'll get a little bit more information. It's not going to be like super centered on stuff from Control, but I could see towards the end, or like there's like maybe a secret way to interact with some of the characters from Control, maybe a tease for Control 2, but that's pretty much the extent of my interest in Alan Wake 2 because I, again, don't super like scary stuff, so I don't know that I would be able to play it.
Yeah, I need to go back and play Control. I think I own it on some platform. I need to look into that and see where
it's
I've
so
got
good.
it.
Like, especially when it happens, I think, way too late in the game, but when you unlock the ability to fly, it just like, it really opens stuff up. Like, it's similar to that Doom thing where you're getting new weapons. Like, with Control, you're constantly getting new powers, and like you only have the 4 weapons, but you're slowly unlocking. Well, actually, you only have the 1 weapon. You have the service weapon, which is the gun, but it can do different things. But it's great. I loved it. I couldn't beat some of it. Parts of it were too hard for me, and I just had to skip over. But that's a great thing about the game is you don't have to 100% it. It's just there's a bunch of different branching paths. There was like a mirror universe thing that I tried to do like 10 times in a row, and I couldn't do it. But it's great. And so Alan Wake, I'm glad exists because Remedy's still doing their thing. But I'm probably going to set this one out.
Other things coming out this month that just came out this last week as we're recording this is that Detective Pikachu Returns, which is a Nintendo game. Neither of us super into that as a game.
Yeah.
But then Forza Motorsport comes out on the 10th. Which is in a few days as we're recording this. Neither of us super into racing games.
True.
Then, Assassin's Creed Mirage. People have been playing that. Did it get weirdly like mixed reviews? I thought I saw.
I don't know. I watched some podcast where they were talking about how it definitely is like going back to the roots. So like they've gotten rid of a lot of the RPG elements that like Odyssey and what was the latest one? Valhalla? Was that the latest one?
Yeah, I think that was the last one.
So it's like pared down, and it's much more similar to Assassin's Creed 1. But
now the thing I heard about it that maybe turned me off a little bit about it was that like the protagonist, I think, is like a villain from Valhalla, maybe, or one of the previous ones, and you're sort of like playing through his story to see like where things went wrong for him and how he turned into a villain. And it's like, well, if you haven't played this previous game, you sort of are going to lack some of the like foundational knowledge to like make this compelling to you.
Yeah, I don't know anything about the lore.
Yeah,
it's insane now, I think.
So I was just like, yeah, that makes it even less interesting to me. And I was already like a little like so-so on whether... Like, I like the idea of returning to sort of the roots and doing like a smaller, sort of shorter version of an Assassin's Creed game instead of like the 1,000 hours it would take to get through Valhalla or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But, well, and also I think they like have really dialed back on the whole like animus thing at this point, and they're really sort of just like living in the space of like the setting of like the fantasy part. It's not really fantasy, but you know what I mean. So I mean, some of that stuff sounds interesting to me. It's just like, it's a series that has sort of passed me by at this point. I think it's hard to get back into, but, so that's out there. And then what was the other thing that was out?
The Cyberpunk DLC came out.
Cyberpunk
I see a lot of
DLC.
people talking about that.
Yeah, people are still talking about that. It is deck compatible, which is a little bit making me think, should I like pick this back up again and like maybe try to play it on Steam Deck? I don't know why that's the appealing factor to me, but like it makes me think about it.
I have thought about diving back in and doing a different build. I keep seeing people doing like dashing builds. I think it was Jason Schreier tweeted that like Cyberpunk 2077 is like a masterpiece now, and he was messing around with a swords, double jump, dashing, like air dash build. And he was like, oh, this is just like Hollow Knight with a shotgun now.
Oh, yeah, I saw that tweet. Yeah.
Which was funny to me.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I am curious about it. I don't know, like we talked about it last week. I was watching some streamer like play through some of the Cyberpunk stuff in the lead up to the launch of the DLC. And I was a little bit like, I don't know if I really care to like revisit a lot of the like, you know, base game stuff again.
Yeah.
Especially when there's so many other like new things out there to play right now.
True.
That it was a little like, do I really want to go back and revisit? I think this is the problem I have with DLCs. It's just like, it sounds cool, but also like there's so much stuff out to play right now. Do I really need to go back to a game that came out a few years ago? But so that's, I don't know. That's out there. I might play it at some point, but right now I'm not feeling particularly called to do so. Another thing that comes out in October, City Skylines 2. Does this interest you?
I played a ton of the first City Skylines game. I might pick this up. Is this on Game Pass?
I was just going to say, I think it's coming to Game Pass.
I don't know if I'm super into playing it with a controller. I will say that. Yeah. But I'm into this. I City Skylines 1, I probably clocked like maybe 50 hours in or something like that. Like I would just log in and build stuff. I wasn't really doing the what's it called? The like story mode. I would just do cheats to get a bunch of money and just experiment. And this one, supposedly, it's got a ton more systems. They fixed a lot of complaints from the first one. And I actually, I saw some guy who has his hands on like an early build of it. And he is like a city planner. That's his job. And so he is like recreating real cities with City Skylines 2. And I watched his stream for a while. It was interesting. But yeah, I don't know if I would... it's cool that it's free on Game Pass, but I don't know that I would pick it up on Game Pass. If I play it, I probably would play it on PC. Yeah,
I mean, you can do... I think it might be the $15 tier of Game Pass that gets you both console and PC Game Pass, and then you could download it that way. But
yeah,
Speaking of things that were on Game Pass that's not in our show notes, that Warhammer 40k Darktide game just came out on console Game Pass, and it's got like this huge update of like they added like skill trees for the different classes that you can play as, and there's kind of a lot going on with that now, and people have been digging into that and saying it's like really transformed that game. If you recall, we talked about it a little bit here and there last year when it came out because I played some on PC Game Pass, and it was fun when it worked, but it was a little bit of a disaster just like in terms of performance and just all kinds of issues like that. So
Yeah.
if that's going to have a nice sort of rebound story, that would be kind of cool. But so yeah, we're probably gonna, I think maybe the only thing we're gonna play this month is Super Mario Brothers Wonder.
I think so.
Yeah, and I know like neither of us are super into Spider-Man, but I don't, maybe it's because it's connected to PS5. It makes me think about that remote, what is it, Portal? Because I've seen some stories lately about how that thing is like selling or pre-ordering really, really well in Japan. I don't know how it's doing
I forgot
here,
about that thing.
but I'm very, very curious to see what the reviews are like for that. Because supposedly, like in my experience, PlayStation Remote Play is not good. I've in the very brief amount of time I have attempted to make that work, it has not worked well. But supposedly this Portal device is supposed to have some sort of proprietary technology that's supposed to make it work better than just if you were trying to remote play on your phone or another device. So I'm very curious to see reviews for that. And I don't know if it's just because I happened to listen to the right podcast at the right time, but I happened to catch some, I forget which one it was because I listened to too many podcasts, but one of I almost wonder if the conversation is flipping a little bit because everybody was like, well, what is this? Nobody wants this. Nobody needs this. And maybe some of that is still the main conversation online around Portal, but also some of the people are like, you know, taking my Switch in portable mode or playing on the Steam Deck, there's a side of me that's now thinking it would be really nice to be able to play PlayStation games portably or on the go. Yeah. So I don't know. I do wonder if once this thing comes out, especially if they're right and their proprietary technology does make the streaming work better, if people start really sort of flipping the conversation on that. But it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, we've waffled enough. Let's get into some of the news for this week. The first thing I threw in here was The Last Faith, which got a November release date. This is like a sort of gothic Metroidvania is what Game Informer is calling it. It kind of looks a little vaguely like Castlevania, but also
looks like Blasphemy to me.
Yeah, also, you mean Blasphemous? It's like...
Oh, yeah, Blasphemous.
Yeah, it's sort of a middle ground between Blasphemous and Castlevania. Sort of
I like it, though.
Yeah, kind of a pixel art style.
A problem I had with Blasphemous is it was too gross at times.
Yeah.
And this looks like it is similar to that, but not as gross. So this is interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always on the lookout for like another cool Metroidvania. And I remember this thing getting trailers a long time ago and it being like one of the ones that people were most looking forward to in that Metroidvania subreddit that I'm always referencing. So when this got another trailer and Game Informer had an article about it coming out in November, I was like, oh yeah, I remember this game. So this is maybe one to keep an eye out for. The Last Faith. And then also coming out here in the next couple of weeks, Diablo 4 is getting a Steam release, which is interesting to me, not only because the implication there is that it'll probably be deck compatible without having to jump through hoops to get like the Blizzard app or whatever working on the Steam Deck, but also, didn't they do this with Overwatch as well? And Are they maybe under Microsoft going away from the Blizzard launcher?
That would be great. There's too many launchers.
Yeah, I was going to say one less launcher, but also just like to have it as a deck compatible thing is always like a little bit better. But like, what if WoW comes to Steam?
That would be crazy. I could definitely see that. Especially when you have it in like docked mode and you could use a keyboard and mouse.
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason not to do that.
It would be so cool to have on the go, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's cool that they're bringing more stuff over to Steam. It will have crossplay and cross progression as well. So if you've been playing it somewhere else and you decide you want to play it on Steam, you can just continue on. I forget which article I looked at, but they brought up the fact that when Overwatch 2 was brought to Steam, it got like review bombed, like to oblivion, basically. So if you look at like Overwatch 2 in Steam and check the reviews, it's all people complaining about Blizzard and the way they've handled Overwatch 2. So yeah. I wonder if something similar will happen with Diablo 4 when it comes to Steam, and just people just sort of berating the developers over the way they've handled it. But supposedly it got a big update as well that's supposed to come. They announced it's supposed to launch with Season 2 on October 17th when it does launch on Steam. And some of the articles I've said they've done enough to sort of reverse some of the things that people were hating about the way things had gone with that game. So keep an eye out for that. Check reviews once that happens and see if sort of things have turned around a little bit. But why don't you tell me about Realms Deep 2023?
Zach, this happened last year too. 3D Realms has these showcases, and for whatever reason, they like don't get a lot of traction on all the game websites that I frequent. And so I hear about it after the fact. I don't watch it live. But it's it definitely is like a very much of boomer shooter showcase. That's like a lot of what they're showing. Like classic, which is right up my alley. So in the show notes, I linked a good article that has a bunch of the highlights, but just to go over, we don't have to go over all of them. They showed a new trailer for Ion Fury Aftershock, which is a DLC for Ion Fury, which is that kind of like Duke Nukem inspired game that came out a couple years ago.
So this was the one that was called Ion Maiden, and they had to change the name. Okay.
So this is kind of a part 2. I don't know how exactly long it is. They're calling it an expansion, so it's not like a full sequel to Ion Fury. But there's like, if you watch the trailer, there's like vehicle segments, there's new weapons, there's old weapons that have different functions. Pretty cool. I probably will check this out. It's out now, actually. It came out on October 2nd.
Oh, there you go.
So maybe I'll check it out later today. The second thing to point out is they showed Phantom Fury, which we talked about on the podcast when they first announced it, maybe last year or the year before. They announced it at a Realms Deep, but it is the sequel to Ion Fury, or no, what is it called? Yeah, Ion Fury. And it's like upgraded to almost like PS2 graphics, or like, so if like Ion Fury 1 was like maybe Duke Nukem, Ion Fury or Ion Phantom is more akin to like Half-Life 1, as far as like the physics involved and how it's like the first one was built in build engine, and this one is built in another engine that I think is very similar to the Half-Life 1. It may even be built in source, I don't know. But this looks cool. It's definitely, there's new weapons, and it's a different way of rendering things. Like everything is 3D now instead of sprites. But same character. It's looks very interesting. I'm just like clicking through the footage they have right now, but this is something that's pretty cool. This is coming out. There's a demo out right now, and it's coming out supposedly in 2023, so we might not have to wait too long for it. Cultic, I love Cultic. We did a video on it back in the day. They released footage of Cultic Interlude, which I guess is the next chapter. Oh no, I'm sorry. It's between chapter 1 and 2 of the game. If you already own Cultic, the like pre-release version of it, you can download this now, but right now on your computer. But more Cultic, always a good thing. You get some brief gameplay footage in this one. Looks solid. I think they fixed a lot of the things that when we first played it, I had some criticisms of it where like the weapon wheel was weird to me. You couldn't use the scroll wheel to get between your weapons. You had to use the weapon wheel. But still looking solid. There's a game called Wraith Aeon of Ruin, which is another like boomer shooter type thing, like classic graphics. Almost looks like
even
Quake.
more Doom-like to me than the other ones.
Yeah, you're fighting demons. There's a bunch of cool, weird-looking weapons that have alternate functions. A lot of them look like alien, like made out of aliens almost. So that looks pretty cool. Might check that out. That's coming out in February of next year, February 27th. And then a console version is... A lot of these are just for PC, but a console version is being released later that year, supposedly. Graven, which I think we maybe have talked about on the podcast. It's been in early access forever, but they're finally releasing it on January 23rd of 2024. This looks pretty cool. I watched someone play through the demo a couple of times. It's kind of like Hexen, if you ever played Hexen back in the day. There's some cool puzzle elements. It's definitely very much a boomer shooter type aesthetic.
But this one's more like medieval fantasy as opposed to like futuristic sci-fi aliens.
Yeah, you have like one of your weapons is like a book that you open up and you do spells from the book. As like it's like a Hexen where like, you know, a weapon is like a staff that shoots a certain thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I wanted to talk about any more of these. There was like kind of a Red Alert style thing, Command and Conquer thing. Called Tempest Rising. I'm not super into that. Core Decay. This is another boomer shooter. All of these are boomer shooters pretty much. But this one looked more like Deus Ex to me. It's like kind of in the Deus Ex, like the original kind of aesthetic. And you have like an inventory and it's like sci-fi. I don't really know what the setting is, but just clicking through the trailer, it looks interesting to me. That might be the last one from Realms Deep, but I don't know why people don't cover this more. Like, I don't know why there isn't a big article on Kotaku about this, because like a lot of these trailers are cool and look unique, and I feel like people would check out. But
I always think about that too with like Metroidvanias. I think it's just like something about the genre is like not, maybe doesn't have super mass wide appeal, and so they just like avoid covering them for whatever reason. Like Game Informer having an article about The Last Faith was like a rarity. I feel like most Metroidvanias don't get a lot of like mainstream games media coverage for some reason, and it's very much the same way with boomer shooters. You really don't see them cover them much unless it's something like Proteus, which weirdly got a lot of coverage, but like most of the others don't.
Proteus is having some sort of DLC or like final version right now, I think, or maybe like an expansion pass or something. I thought I saw something about how Proteus is getting an upgrade, but I did not put it in my show notes because I forgot about it until just now. The other news related thing I want to talk about, have you seen all this Titanfall 2 news recently?
No.
The developers who also make Apex released, like Titanfall 2 came out forever ago, but it's a heavily lauded game. People love Titanfall 2. The story is great. Famously, the first Titanfall was just multiplayer, and I had that one. I played a bunch of it back in the day. It was just, you would drop into games and play like one of 4 game types, and people were kind of like, hey, this is kind of I don't know about this. Like, I don't know if they should charge this much money for just multiplayer. But Titanfall 2 came out, has an amazing story mode that people love, and also great multiplayer, because the multiplayer was so refined in the first one. It's got great shooting, just like Apex, but nothing really was going on with it. And then a couple weeks ago, the developers updated Titanfall 2. They pushed an update to the Steam version of Titanfall 2, and there's like a new multiplayer game mode. And so people started jumping back into Titanfall 2 multiplayer, and now the like concurrent players on Steam is like super high for a game that came out so long ago. And there's a bunch of people on like Twitch and YouTube that are playing Titanfall 2 and being like, man, this game was really solid. It kind of got a rough go of it because it came out, I don't know if you recall, but Titanfall 2 came out right after or right in the middle of when Call of Duty and what's the other one?
Battlefield, maybe?
Yes. Yeah, Call of Duty and Battlefield both had like future settings where you had like jump packs where you could like jetpack around and stuff, and people were like, we hate this, stop doing this. And then Titanfall 2 came out, and it's like a masterpiece of movement. Like you can wall run and double jump and do all this crazy stuff, and people were like, oh, this is more of the same. But it's really good. I have thought about downloading it because it is on Game Pass, which I think is another reason it's getting this like revival. But people have speculated that maybe a Titanfall 3 is coming because Apex is still going strong, and everybody loves Titanfall 2, so they're thinking they updated this game mode for Titanfall 2, and they're having all this like resurgence. So people are hoping that there's a Titanfall 3 on the way. But
yeah, that's interesting. I've played the story for Titanfall 2, and that was like a really fun campaign to play through, and people are always like praising that. But yeah, I've never played the multiplayer. I think it's really fun and interesting when a game that's like years old gets some weird resurgence because people online are like, you know what, this game is good and we didn't enjoy it enough when it came out initially. Let's like have this go viral, basically.
I have a lot of nostalgia for Titanfall because it's such a unique gameplay mechanic in the multiplayer because you are, jetting around and stuff. But the cool thing about it is your Titan is always like on cooldown, and like killing people or like doing cool stuff makes the cooldown decrease. But eventually you get to a point where everyone starts calling their Titans down, and there's like 5 different kinds of Titans that you can build your own Titan almost, where there's like, I think in the story mode, there's like a bunch of different kinds that you run into. There's like a super lightweight one that has a sword, and there's like a big one that like can open up its chest and shoot a beam. And so you can have all these different ones, and it's just a really cool, it's cool also because you can pick your loadout, and your loadout includes like a weapon that you would use to kill other pilots, but also a Titan weapon, where if you're just running around and you see a Titan, you can switch over to your Titan weapon and actually do some real damage to it. It's a really cool, I have a lot of nostalgia for that first one. I played a ton of it because it had a really cool game mode where you were fighting the other team, and eventually one team would win, but it had a cool conceit, which is also in Titanfall 2, where even if you lost, you could also try to escape. So like one team would reach the point allotment for winning, and then it would say like, you've lost, we got to retreat. And so you would have a chance, you'd basically have one life left to try to get to a dropship on the other side of the map. And if you did, even though you lost, you kind of felt like you won because you like escaped. So it made the endings of matches fun, even if you lost, which is really cool, I think. And for a long time, people were like, why aren't Titans in Apex? Apex is in this universe, like, wouldn't it be cool? And it frankly would be cool. So I hope that Titanfall 3 is in development, and like when it release, wouldn't it be cool if when it releases, they also released some sort of Titan game mode because there's like deathmatch in Apex now. There's like, they added new game types besides Battle Royale. So
oh, did they?
Yeah, there's not really a reason not to add that. I might need to
revisit that now. Because to be honest, like a normal mode, like a deathmatch, is way more interesting to me than the Battle Royale mode.
Yeah.
So maybe I should re-download Apex and give that another shot.
I've been thinking about, because I have that Xbox now, and I've basically just been playing Starfield and Cocoon on it, and a couple other indie games. But
you download Apex.
About getting a Battle Royale on it.
Yeah, you could download Apex or Fortnite or... well, I mean, I guess you could get Call of Duties, but yeah, I think it's interesting because the Titans are basically, the game's twist on like not really kill streak rewards, but like that type of thing. famously,
it's like an ultimate almost in Overwatch.
Like an ultimate ability. But it's basically like the developer of Call of Duty went to make a new shooter, and they're like, well, we want to do something similar, but like do a cool, unique twist on it, and that's basically what it is. So yeah, maybe I should check out Apex Legends now that you mentioned that it has modes other than the Battle Royale one.
I think it's a cool universe, and I might download Titanfall 2. Hopefully this is still the resurge that's happening, and I haven't like missed it,
yeah.
But I never played the single player for it. I just watched someone play it, so I think I would love to play the single player for Titanfall 2.
Yeah, that's worth going back to play. But yeah, just mechanically speaking, that game was like very, very good. And same with Apex. Like they are really good with like the movement and shooting mechanics. So let's talk about the stuff we've been playing and watching. We're getting there quicker this week than normally, but
yeah, not as much news this week, but I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about coming up. I mean, we're right. I feel like we're gonna have a ton to talk about with Mario Wonder, because I feel like that's gonna be. They've shown a lot of it, but I feel like there's going to be infinite stories to talk about with that game. It's going to be so fun to play.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot to talk about with that, and hopefully we can do like a Starfield late game sort of spoiler type episode as well.
Yes, I'm still working my way through Starfield. I haven't played a lot this week just because I've been doing other stuff, which I'll talk about in a second. But I will, at some point, get to the New Game Plus of that game, and we can talk about it.
Yeah, so the first thing I want to talk about that I've been playing a little bit of. I'm not super far into it yet, but I did start Sea of Stars this week. And it is that game, if you're not familiar with it, it's Sabotage Studio that did The Messenger, did like a sort of throwback 90s era Super NES ode to like old JRPGs like Chrono Trigger and Super Mario RPG. It's basically those two games thrown together. But yeah, it looks great. The music's great. I've found the combat more challenging than I thought I would. There was like the first boss that you really run into is sort of like a training type of a situation, but I didn't understand that you could like swap to the arm that he's holding the sword in to attack that, and it turned out to be the key to defeating the boss, because otherwise he will basically wipe your party pretty quickly if you don't address that. But
well, in the demo, we both played the demo, I think. It was great because your guys were only down for like 1 or 2 turns, and they would pop back up by themselves. Like you didn't have to use a Phoenix down on them. Is that still the case in the main game?
It is, but yeah, you have to be careful. Like another place I died a couple of times was I ran into like this group of enemies. There was like 3 of them, and it was the same type of enemy for all 3 of them, and they would keep throwing out these 3 bombs, and you could you do the active combat sort of Super Mario RPG style where you hit a button as an attack is about to land on you, and you sort of defend yourself, and so you take less damage. But even with doing that, you still take a good amount of damage from those bombs. And like all 3 of them would go back to back to back, and it would just like wipe my party. And it's like, I don't know how I could be doing this differently. So it was like weird that I was not expecting it to be as challenging as it has been so far. And I guess that challenge sort of comes and goes in waves like that. But I looked it up to see if other people were also having this problem, or if I just suck at the game, I guess. I don't know. And there was like a Reddit thread where somebody else was asking about it, and they were like, well, should I just like be grinding these areas to try to level up before I like advance? And they're like, no, because the enemies scale with you, so you can't really grind. You basically just have to figure out the combat and get better at it, and sort of understand what you're doing. And you can, like, the game gives you the tools to do that, I guess, because you have 2 of your characters, their abilities have like some sort of heal where you can either heal yourself or like one of the other characters. And of course you can cook meals that you can then eat. And so you can sort of prolong a fight that way, even if like one of your other members has gone down. You can just sort of like, okay, I'm just gonna try to heal up as much as possible so that I don't end up with a party wipe here. but you're also sort of managing, like with your combat, you only have so much like mana that you can use. And so your basic attacks will build up your mana, and then you use your mana to, do your special attacks. And some of those can be heals, and some of them are just like damage attacks. And then once that runs out, you have to go back to using your basic attacks as well to build up your mana again. And enemies will also have these like icons above their head occasionally when they're sort of building up to like some sort of special attack that they can do. And it'll be like there will be sort of 3 icons, like a sword icon, a hammer icon, and then another sword icon. And so what you need to do is use slashing damage to knock out the 2 sword icons, and then like a blunt attack to take out the other one. And if you do that, you sort of break the enemy, and so they can't do their special attack. But like occasionally you'll have like situations where multiple enemies will have that above their head, and one of them will be like slashing damage plus like the solar special ability, and it's like, okay, I have one character that can do that stuff, and you have multiple enemies, and one of them, like, there's no way for me to do this before it's their turn to attack, and so basically I have no option here to like stop this. So you have to like sort of strategize and be like, okay, well, I could possibly stop this other character from using their special attack, but I cannot stop this other one. So you just kind of have to try to get good at the timing of like timing those button presses when you're attacking to do extra damage, but also timing the button presses when you're being attacked to try to defend. And so maybe I just need to get better at that and maybe spend some more time with the game. But I'm liking the setting, the characters, and everything else. Like, we really enjoyed the demo when we played that, and I would say that I am liking the main game just as much. It's just I'm finding it more difficult than I expected it to be so far. And then I did also play a demo for Star Ocean: The Second Story R, which you can get on, I think, pretty much every platform this game is coming out on. And I was really pleasantly surprised by this. This is a game that I believe is a remake of like a PlayStation era Star Ocean game. So it's sort of that 90s era game, but it's like a JRPG. And the music's great. The visual style is like really striking because it's that sort of HD 2D thing, but it's also like 3D. So you have like 3D environments that look kind of realistic, and then you have like pixel art characters, and you're moving around in a 3D world. I really, really like the visual style of this game. And the combat was fun as well. I think I am going to pick this up when it actually comes out. I think it comes out like early November. But yeah, I was really surprised by this game. I was kind of just like, yeah, it's a demo. It's free to download. I'll give it a shot, and wasn't really expecting much of anything from it, but I was like really into it. And the story is kind of that that sort of subgenre of like a character sort of thrown sort of fish out of water style into like a different setting. I believe it's sort of like futuristic and sci-fi, and then you interact with like some sort of device and end up thrown back into this like sort of medieval fantasy world. And I don't know why, but I really like that as a subgenre. I feel like Farscape is that kind of a thing. Yeah. You're not thrown into a medieval universe, but it's a person thrown into like a futuristic sci-fi world. And there's like a lot of, it's sort of a subgenre with a lot of different things. Chrono Trigger, I think, is that as well.
It's like an isekai.
Yeah. And I really like that as a subgenre. So I was into the story as well. And I didn't put it in the show notes, but I did also start the Necrom expansion to ESO.
Oh, yeah, I saw when I logged on to Discord, I saw you were playing Elder Scrolls Online.
Yeah, so that DLC was on sale for like $20 recently, and I was like, well, the time is now right. And so I have jumped back into ESO, and I just like being in the Elder Scrolls universe. It's kind of one of those, like, anytime you revisit Skyrim, it's just like, it's just nice to be in that universe and have the music and everything. And there's like a new class, so I started a new character. They have the what do they call it, Arcanist, who has some pretty crazy abilities. You'll like fire out these green orbs of some sort, and it sort of builds up these like stacks of I don't know what it's called. I'm really bad at like the names of all of this stuff from Endgame. But also I like just started it, so I'm like just trying to figure it all out. But you basically build up those stacks, and I think they're supposed to help like give you more healing from like all sources while they're active. But then also you have this other move that like when you hit it, it's basically like a Kamehameha wave, and it like consumes all of those stacks of the orbs that you have around your character to buff it to make it even stronger, and you basically melt everything in front of you, and it's really fun. So I've actually been having a lot of fun with that so far as well. But I played the High Isle DLC last year and had a lot of fun with it. It's like, it's not a game that I play a lot of. Like, I don't get into like the end game stuff, and I don't really care that much about a lot of the MMO trappings of it, but like as just like a little self-contained ESO or Elder Scrolls story with like they'll give you like a little chunk of map that you can explore, and there's all kinds of stuff to find, and you're finding quests pretty much everywhere you go to do. There was a new companion that I met and did his quest line, and now I have him as a companion in the game, so he's running around with me. So yeah, I just like Elder Scrolls. And if you're like me and you want Elder Scrolls 6, but you realize it is years away still, I would say you can get plenty of Elder Scrolls out of ESO. So,
can you buy a house in Elder Scrolls? Or like, can you, similar to like the outposts or like your ship, is there a place where all your companions can like go chill when they're not with you?
I don't know if you could you basically have a menu where you can go into your allies and be like, okay, I want you active right now. And you just like hit the button and they join you. I don't know if you'd send them anywhere, but that's how you sort of manage which ally you have active at the moment. But you do have like livable spaces where you can decorate them, and you have different items that you can place around. And so you could basically build out a little like home that you would live in, that you could return to, and we would have like a chest where you could store stuff as well. But I haven't done too much of that yet, but that it does exist in the game, yes. And of course you have all your different mounts. I feel like I haven't played a ton, so I don't have like an exhaustive list of like all the different not companions, but like mounts, and you can have like a pet that follows you as well. But I do have a good amount of them just from having played like the Morrowind DLC and the High Isle DLC. And now as I'm going through this Necrom one, I started a new character, but I already had like a bunch of different mounts to pick from. So that was fun.
This reminded me for some reason, this should have been in our news segment, but Minecon is right around the corner, the Minecraft convention, and there's the annual mob vote. Every year they let you decide. They come up with 3 new animals / enemies, mobs that they might add to the game, and the community votes on them, and then they add one of them, and then the other ones are just gone, and you never hear from them again. But I saw it's not happening until next week, but they released what the mobs are. There is a penguin. And when the penguins like make your boat go faster, I guess they like ride alongside you. There is a crab, and if you kill the crab, you can craft. Or no, the crab's claws, like somehow I think you wear them, or maybe you make a potion with them, and it lets you place and destroy blocks farther away from you. And then there's an armadillo, and if you kill the armadillo, you can craft its little shell into an armor for your dog.
Really?
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Zach, I haven't really been playing anything this week, but I have been watching a lot of stuff.
What have you been watching?
longtime listeners of the podcast will know that earlier this summer, my girlfriend and I started watching the Venture Brothers from the beginning. And we finally finished it, and we were ready to watch the movie that they released, the series finale movie. And we watched it. It's Venture Brothers, like Radiant is the Blood of the Baboon Heart, which is a long title, but it actually does make sense in the context of the show. And it was great. It was really great, actually. I loved it. I love the Venture Brothers. It's a really unique, cool show that's been going on for like 20 years, crazily, like almost over 20 years. And supposedly this is it. I don't know if they're maybe gonna... The two creators pretty much have just been working on this their entire careers for like the last 20 years. So I don't know if they're gonna make another movie. I would love for them to make like a trilogy of movies, but I don't know if that's in the cards. They wanted this last thing they made to be another season, a final season, but I think HBO or whoever owns the license now was like, that's not happening. You can make a movie instead. And the movie was great. It definitely, I can see where it could have been a whole season, like if they stretched some stuff out. But it was really solid. I really enjoyed the way that it ended, and I hope that there is more Venture Brothers, but who can say if there will be. But it's all on Max, so if you're at all interested, it's a great use of time to watch. I think it's 7 seasons, but some of the seasons only have like 10 episodes. And then the movie is only like an hour and a half, but it's great. I also watched a bunch of old romantic comedies this week for whatever reason.
Oh, really?
I watched one that I have seen before, but I wanted to return to it, coincidentally, called Return to Me. Have you heard of this movie?
No.
I thought it was set in New York, but actually it turns out, similar to the other movie that I watched that I thought was set in New York, both of the movies I watched this week were set in Chicago for whatever reason. It's a weird little movie. It's a romantic comedy where David Duchovny is an architect in Chicago, and he is building a gorilla habitat at the Lincoln Park Zoo because his wife is super into gorillas and is like works at the Lincoln Park Zoo. And then she dies. She gets in a car accident. And it just so happens that she is an organ donor, and her heart goes to an ill person who has always needed a heart, played by Minnie Driver, who is from Grosse Pointe Blank and other things. And so Minnie Driver has this heart, a new lease on life, and it just so happens she runs into David Duchovny and they start going out. But then obviously it's tricky because she finds out that she has his dead wife's heart. But a great little movie, I have to say. A little bit too much. There's a subplot where there's a bunch of old people that are always hanging out, and you have to like watch them complain and debate who the best singer is, and like if Irish singers are better than Italian singers. That I think totally could have been cut and was not necessary. But a great little movie. And then I also watched a movie that I actually had never seen before, but it was on Disney Plus. So I was like, why not? And this one you may have seen. I watched While You Were Sleeping. Have you seen that?
I don't think so.
That is the movie where Sandra Bullock works at, this is another crazy thing. She works at a train station in Chicago. And I guess in the past, in current times, if you want to use public transit, it's mostly on your phone. Or, like 10 years ago, I briefly had an internship in Boston. And when I had to do stuff in Boston, I would buy like a week-long card from like a terminal. Like if I wanted to ride the subway or whatever, or they call it the T maybe? I don't remember. It's been so long. But I would go up to a terminal. I would say, I'd like to purchase 1 week pass, and it would spit out basically a little credit card. And then I would tap that or slide it, and it would let me into the train station. That was maybe in 2007, maybe. This movie takes place in 1995 or something. It's in the early 90s. And I guess the way that trains used to work in the past is that you somehow got subway tokens. And I've heard the term subway token before, so it is a thing that exists. But you somewhere in the world, you purchase a subway token, and then you walk up to a person who is in a little subway booth and toss them one subway token. And that, I guess, is good for one ride. And once they get the token, they press a button or like move something, and then you're let onto the track. And that blows my mind for some reason. I don't know why. It seems like there's a better way to do that, but I guess that's how you did it back in the day. But
these days, don't you just walk up to a little thing and you scan like a card or something and you walk through?
Not even that. I visited my brother in New York, and I was like, what do I have to do for public transit? And he was like, nothing. And I was like, I don't understand. And he was like, all phones with tap to pay just work on terminals. And he's right. Like, I have Google Pay on my phone, and I just put my phone up to the subway thing, and it automatically took it. It spent like, it was like, $1 or something. And then the thing opened, and I didn't have to set anything up. There's no like in New York City travel app or anything. I was expecting there to be some sort of thing I would pay into, but it's just Google Pay or Apple Pay. Everyone's using their like Apple Watches to get in or whatever. It's like totally no friction. But this is a very small portion of what the movie is about. But I just thought it was very weird. But no, she is a subway attendant or whatever. People give her one of these tokens, and she presses a button to like let the doors open or whatever. And she sees Peter Gallagher every day. And he's like this like fancy looking businessman, and she's in love with him, but she's never talked to him. And one day, some young toughs are like, hey, give me your wallet or whatever, and like push him onto the tracks. And she's like, oh no. And she runs out and she saves him, but he hit his head or something, and he's in a coma. And through a series of crazy events at the hospital, she takes him to the hospital, and it accidentally makes it seem as though she is his fiancée while his family's there. And so his family's like, oh, he never told us he had a fiancée. She starts hanging out with them, and it's like a kind of a crazy thing. And then it turns out his brother is Bill Pullman, who we all love from Zero Effect and other things, who's the president in Independence Day. And she falls in love with his brother. And it's a great little Chicago story, I guess. I didn't realize it was so Chicago focused, but it definitely is. But those two movies were great, and it's sometimes fun to watch just a dumb little romantic comedy. And so I did that instead of playing video games this week.
Yeah, sometimes it's fun to go back and watch like weird old like 80s or 90s movies.
It's crazy to me how the past was. And it's such a blind spot for me. I was talking to my friend the other day. I don't know how airplanes worked back in the day. Like, I don't understand if there was like, did you have to go to a travel agent? If you were like, oh, I'm definitely going to go to I'm going to go visit my parents for Christmas, and it's like March, or it's like, maybe November. Did you just show up to the airport on like December 23rd and you were like, I want to go to this state, because there's no internet. How do you know when flight, did they print it in the paper, or did you have to call the airport? Like, I don't know how you purchased plane tickets. This is another thing. In Return to Me, she like gets her new heart, and she's got a new lease on life. And her grandpa at one point is like, you've always wanted to go to Florence, Italy. Well, here it is. And he hands her a plane ticket, and she's like, oh my God, I wonder when I'm going to go. So like plane tickets in the past, I guess just like you bought to a location and then you could take it to the airport whenever, I think, and just be like, this thing gets me to go to Florence. So like figure it out. I don't know how that works. Like, do you know how that worked?
Now that you mention it, I don't. I think maybe you had to like go to the airport and be like, hey, I want, like, what flights do you have available to go to such and such a place? And they'd say, we got one at this time on this day. And you'd be like, okay. Or maybe you'd be like, I want to go for this week or whatever. And they would like figure it out. And then they would print you your ticket, and you just come back later when it was time to go. Because
I feel like I know that travel agents were a thing, but I feel like you only used travel agents when you were going to go to Europe or something, or when you were going to take a big trip. I don't think you used them for just like domestic flights, but maybe you did. I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like you're right. You went to a travel agent if you're like, all right, I'm planning a Disney World vacation for my family for like this week of like a couple months later or whatever. And they would work all the details out and like get you your hotel reservation and your rental car and your tickets and all of this. And they would handle all of that stuff for you, so you didn't have to like figure that out since you couldn't do it online.
That definitely happened, because like when I was a child, I was probably like, 4 or 5 years old, and we went to Disney World. I think I went too young because I don't really remember a lot of it. But my parents didn't have the internet, and they told me about we were going like, weeks beforehand. So like, how did they know? Like, did they go to the airport and were like, hey, I want to go to Florida 2 weeks from now? Or I don't know. It blows my mind. I
was going to say, I'm
so
went
curious.
to Disney World when I was like, I don't know, a teenager, maybe like 12, 13, 14, somewhere in that age range. And yeah, they must have gone to a travel agent because I vaguely recall that at the mall, there was like, you could go get your Chick-fil-A, which was nice. But then they also had just like right across the way, they had like a little travel agency there.
Really?
And I vaguely recall like sitting with my parents in that travel agency, and they were like talking to this person for what felt like forever. So
the past is crazy.
Yeah. The time where the internet didn't exist or
Here's
was
another
not
thing.
available.
I was watching Inside Man, which did not take place that long ago. Did you ever see the movie with Clive Owen?
Oh, that had Clive. Well, I must be thinking of a different movie.
Inside Man is like a bank heist movie where Denzel Washington is like the negotiator they bring in. Jodie Foster's in it as well.
Oh, I did not know Clive Owen was in that. Is he like the main character?
He's the main bank robber. He's in a mask most of the time, though. I mean,
I just vaguely remember that being a Denzel Washington movie.
So in that movie, which again, I think takes place in like 2008 or something, but it was pre-smartphones. And so everybody had flip phones, which, I mean, I understand how flip phones work, but I forgot that you didn't lock your phone back in the day. Like at one point he is collecting everybody's cell phones and he's like, where's your cell phone? And this guy is like, I don't have a cell phone. And so he just starts picking up other cell phones out of a bag, flipping them open and trying to find this guy's name so his cell phone will ring because he works at the bank and he thinks somebody else at the bank maybe has his phone number. But like, that was just a thing you could do, is you could pick up someone's phone, flip it open, and just like go through their gallery and like call people. Like lock screens didn't exist until iPhones, which is also something that blows my mind.
Is that true? Did they not have like some sort of like passcode of some sort?
I don't think so. I don't remember ever having a passcode for a flip phone.
I only have the vaguest recollection of having a flip phone. I definitely did have like more than one of them, and I don't remember what the operating system looked like or how that worked at all.
I think you just flipped it open and it was like, do you want to play Snake right now? And you could say no to that and make a call. But I don't think there was a lock. Like iPhones, I think, were the first thing where you could slide to unlock.
Well, yeah, but I mean, even that's not like an actual code.
True. Yeah, that's a good question, I guess. I don't know if the first iPhones had a lock screen. I'm not sure when that was invented. I'm sure we could look it up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you probably could get like some sort of passcode on there. But I mean, I definitely remember I had an iPhone 3G, which was like back in 2007 or 8 or something like that. And I don't remember if I had a passcode on it.
Crazy,
but I do
crazy
remember,
time to live in.
I do remember my brother had like an old, like one of the first Android phones, and he had this like pattern on it. And I was like, whoa, that's like really weird.
Yes, technology. I do remember that. Like it was a grid of like 9 circles and he would draw a symbol on it.
Yeah.
That was great. That was a great way to unlock your phone.
I think that still exists.
I'm into that.
Yeah. Although now they do like weird biometrics, like, hey, we're just going to look at your face and see if it's you or not. And you can definitely trick that. And we're like, oh, phone's totally secure. Don't even worry.
Yeah. This podcast is now about the past.
Yeah, let's talk about the 90s. So the 90s were a crazy time.
It was crazy.
Yeah, I was thinking about it the other day, and like I don't remember the era in Saved by the Bell where Zach Morris had like the giant phone, but I do remember a movie called Operation Dumbo Drop.
Oh yes, I remember that movie.
And maybe this was just because it was like military and they had like some sort of weird satellite phone, but the phone they had in that was enormous. You remember car phones were a thing as well?
Yeah, there's so many. For a while earlier this summer, I was on a kick where I was watching old Harrison Ford movies. And he made a lot of movies where in the 80s and 90s, he was just like a stern businessman. Like he was that in Sabrina. He was that in, I think it was called Working Girl. In a lot of those movies, he is just like in a car, like being chauffeured into New York City, reading the New York Times or something about stocks. And then like he'll get a phone on his like a call on his car phone. It was like very fancy, like it would flip open and you were supposed to be like, ooh, ah. But now it looks so antiquated.
Yeah, no, at the time it was like, oh, you know, this guy's rich and this is like, he's got like this top of the line futuristic vehicle that he's in because it has a car phone. And now it's just like, nobody can imagine having a phone that would be only tied to your car.
Is that the same technology as when a car has like OnStar?
Yeah, I mean, maybe you could probably trace the lineage to that. Yeah.
Is that how, I mean, I've never thought about this, but is a car phone just a cell phone that's built into a car, but we didn't have the word for cell phone yet? Like, was it based on towers? I guess I don't know how car phones worked back in the 80s.
I was going to say, I don't know how car phones worked. Did they have some sort of crazy technology that allowed that to work that they don't really use anymore?
It must have been tower based, right? I mean, I guess I don't know.
I think so. Maybe it's like the precursor to cell phones, but like it was, the technology at the time was too big to be reasonable to like carry around in your pocket. So they just like built them into cars instead. And
it's like the size of a suitcase, but it's just a little receiver.
Yeah, exactly.
That's another crazy thing is like you buy a car with a car phone. How does it get a number?
Paying the monthly fees for that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're paying the phone company, and then the phone company tells you like, hey, if you want to call your car, it's this phone number.
Yeah, exactly. Here, I give out my number. This is to my car. Let me go check my answering machine in my car.
Yeah, it's so crazy.
I need to make a call. I'm going to my car.
Here's my phone number. Here's my home phone number, but also here's my car phone number.
Yeah.
So if you can't catch me at my house, try calling my moving vehicle.
Yeah. Also, like, would it have caller ID? Probably not.
No, 1,000% no.
Yeah. So you're just getting a call from.
Because didn't you have to? Wasn't there like a thing? Was this a thing in the past where before caller ID you could dial, like if someone called you and they hung up, you could dial like 995 star 69. It was star 69.
Yeah.
And then it would call that number back somehow.
Yeah, it was like redial.
How crazy. Now it's a button for us.
Yeah, and you could go to like a payphone and you could see like the number on it and you could give that out if you're like, all right, I'm just going to sit by this payphone and wait for somebody to call me back.
Did you ever do right when The Matrix came out, there was that thing where, Morpheus called Neo and he was like, they're coming for you. I don't know what they're going to do. But we did a thing when we first got cell phones in high school where we would go to the mall, and in the mall, there was a bank of payphones. We would call one of our cell phones with one of the payphones so we could get the phone number. And then we would go like hang out at Cinnabon or whatever and call that payphone so that would ring. And then we would pretend to be like Morpheus, like, and saying they're coming for you and stuff.
Yeah, we would do that. Actually, there was a Carlos O'Kelly's in town, and me and my brother would like prank call the payphone, and like the employees got so fed up with it that they removed the payphone. It just like was randomly not there anymore. The next time we went, we're like, oh, did we cause this? Are we the reason why they can't have a payphone?
And now they're nowhere. Like I think pranking people was the only time I ever used a payphone, and now they're not even around anymore.
I remember when I was in high school, before I had a cell phone, I would, like, if we got off school early or like whatever, I would have to go to like the office and be like, hey, can I have like a quarter? Because I need to like make a call, or however much it was. Because I didn't have change on me because I was a poor student. But then I would go make a call on their payphone that they had there and be like, hey, I'm ready to be picked up.
You better get here now.
Yeah, come right away. That was definitely a thing that happened. But yeah, The past was crazy.
That's my parting wisdom for today is maybe time travel wouldn't be that fun.
Yeah, watch some like 90s era movies and marvel at the technology.
I will say, I don't know, man. I feel like 80s / early 90s New York was probably a super cool place to be. Like, modern day New York was pretty cool. I went there earlier this year, and it's cool, but I feel like there's such a, like, Die Hard with a Vengeance? Is that the third one? And just, like, other movies portray, like, 80s and 90s New York as just, like, a really chill, crazy place where stuff's always happening. But I don't want to go to the past in Chicago. I feel like that's just going to be depressing.
But you would go to the past in New York?
I think it would be cool. I don't know why, but I just like, maybe it's just the way it was shot. I watched When Harry Met Sally also a couple weeks ago. And that also just like, New York just like is gorgeous in that movie.
Yeah.
It's like the fall sometimes.
Yeah,
they're like sitting in Central Park.
They have like fall and Christmas in that movie in New York. And it's just like, yeah, this would be a cool place to see. But yeah.
Now everything's like that restaurant in Central Park is shut down. Like you can't eat there anymore.
Yeah, it's like super massive bummer time right now to be in a big city.
I think it's just because like it became possible for more people to move there, and also it's just like such a cool place. And now it's like a little bit overcrowded. Whereas like, maybe it's just the way movies are, because like movies always portray things as being like, oh, you're the only person on this street right now, even though it's like rush hour. But it was like very crowded when I was in New York. At least when I was in like Manhattan. When I was in Queens, it was like super chill and nice and like a lot more like what I expected it to be. But we briefly walked through. The worst part of my trip to New York was walking through Times Square, because I was just like, let's just go see it. And it was just like really not good. It was like hot, and like only that part of the city it felt like was smoggy for some reason. And it was just like, that was the only place where people like talked to me on the street. Everywhere else I was like super chill and people kept to themselves and it was nice. But I was like, a bunch of people trying to sell stuff like walked up and tried to sell stuff from us. And that was like awful. But
yeah, if they walk up to you and try to hand you something, just don't take it. Just keep walking.
But yeah, I think I've said all I need to say about the past.
The past? They're different eras.
That's true. Maybe next week we'll talk about the 70s.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll watch some 70s movies and talk about the weird old things that happened in the 70s. On that note, why don't you go ahead and follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter at Starside Cafe, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.